Welcome to the Beer Den Podcast. Tonight we'll be drinking Wild and Funky from Bomb Brewery.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Beer Den Podcast. My name is Ethan Hoopy.
And I'm Michael LaRoe. Tonight we're drinking Wild and Funky from Bomb Brewery. It's over in Belgium, so another import for us. They were founded by Bert Van Heck, and they do a method of brewing called gypsy brewing, where they essentially don't have any of their own equipment. They just have the recipes, and they just go to different breweries and use that said brewery's equipment to brew their beer.
I feel like that's something that we've noticed more and more doing this podcast is actually that's a fairly common thing. Having different breweries use other people's equipment in order to brew specific types of beer. Sometimes it's due to transportation of the beer once it's made. We've had like a Hawaiian one that instead of brewing it in Hawaii and then having to transport it over to the States, they just have another company brew it here in the States, and then they're able to
Makes a lot more sense. And I feel like it's a lot cheaper to do it that way, especially if you're starting out. I mean, if you have a really good recipe of beer and you want to get it out to the masses, but you don't have the capital to start, this is definitely a great alternative way to get into the game.
Yeah.
This one was a nice golden color, and when it was poured, it had a whitish one-finger head to it. It had a very sweet aroma, I felt, as well. They say it's brewed with apples and pears.
I think the sweetness of those fruits really came out in the smell. They were definitely prevalent there.
I thought this one was very slightly bitter, not a whole lot, but...
Yeah, I was, as far as bitter goes, I would say it's very mild bitter. I think it was a pretty smooth beer all the way through. It wasn't really aggressive. This is a sour, and I thought that the sour it was pretty mild.
Oh, yeah, I agree. The sour on this one was very lacking, in my opinion, especially compared to other ones we've had that were really like mouth puckering.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I mean, going right into mouthfeel for this, I also kind of felt that the sour flavor being a little lacking. It felt kind of thin and almost watery.
I would definitely agree with that. It was, I think thin is a really good way of describing it. Flavor-wise,
I mean, there was a little sour there, and I think it was mostly the apple flavoring that we were getting from it, not so much the pear, at least for me.
Yeah, this is a lot more akin to drinking like an apple juice or something. It's even like that acidity. It's very mild. It's not...
This was actually pretty similar to like a cider.
Yeah.
We base everything on 3 criteria here on the podcast. We have quality out of 50 points, value out of 25, and design out of 25. I ended up scoring this at a 28. I felt that it was lacking in that sour flavor that I look for when I'm drinking a sour ale. And I thought the flavor was pretty one-dimensional. It was pretty much just that apple, and there wasn't much depth to that either. And it wasn't even like a very crisp apple. It was just like, I don't know, kind of like diluted, watered-down apple juice.
Yeah. I ended up scoring it a 33. I did think that the sour was very lackluster. I really wish that there was a bit more of that. That's kind of why I think if you're going to go for a sour beer, you want some sour to it. But I think there were some positives. It is a very smooth beer all the way through, which kind of allows it to be a good sort of party beer, something that you could just very casually drink and it's not overwhelming or anything like that. And because of a lot of its sweetness, it also is a very easy to drink beer. So I thought some of those redeeming qualities kind of should be represented in the score, but ultimately I think that the lack of sour in it. I think we've had better.
Value-wise, this came in at $6.75 for a single bottle. I didn't think that it was appropriately priced for what you got. I could see the prices up there more because it's an import than anything else.
Yeah.
But I ended up giving it a 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that it's probably the fact that it's an import is why it's actually so expensive. Because even at $6.75, that's not terrible, but for an individual bottle, that's kind of bad. That's especially because, like, kind of going back to the flavor, there's really nothing spectacular about it, so it really makes it difficult to justify that price. So I ended up going with a 14 as my value score.
Design-wise, I gave this a 16. It's in a unique shaped bottle, but it doesn't have any stamping or neck label to it. The bottle cap, usually there's stuff printed on the bottle caps, but this just comes with a blank black cap.
Yeah.
It does have the alcohol content, 4.5%. I like the label, the artwork, and the name. I thought it was decently laid out. Wild and funky. It has a bunch of wild animals running, and they're being chased by like a chef and a devil, like throwing apples and pears at them. So like that's definitely funky.
Yeah, for sure.
It did have their website for the brewery, and it even kind of goes into like a slight description of kind of how it's made, where it's a Belgian sour beer existing out of 3 separate mixed fermentations, and it does say that it contains apples and pears.
Yeah.
But that's all you really get for a description, so it's kind of lacking there as well. And then there was no bottle date or expiration date on this one, so that's definitely something that we like to see. It gives you at least some hint of when you should be drinking this. What do you think, Eva?
I'll start with the fact that I do appreciate that they had a little bit of detail as far as the description goes. We've had a lot of beers that kind of just have like 3 words describing it. And that to me, I think is it's too simplified. I like to have a little bit of flavor text there. I agree with you that like the actual imagery on it is really good. It definitely draws your eye to it. It's really fun and wild and funky. And like you said, it does have the alcohol content, does have the call to the website and things like that. It doesn't really have anything referencing their social media or anything like that. But because it does kind of touch on a lot of things that we do look for, I ended up giving it a 17.
Okay. So overall, that's a 64 for you, Ethan. A 56 for myself. So all in all, that's a 60 for Bomb Brewery's Wild and Funky Sour Ale.
Hey everybody. Thank you for listening to another Beer Den review.
Don't forget to follow us on social media, links down in the description.
Subscribe, like, and share, and if there are any beers you would like us to try out, leave them in the comments below.
We'll see you on the next episode of the Beer Den Podcast.